Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev rematch. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like the video if you do indeed like the video, and feel free to join the Patreon as well. There it has been a great selection of members and videos that have come as a result of the Patreon, and I really appreciate all the support I've had with it so far. And again, the link will be in the description. You can request any kind of combat sporting related content, and I will try my best to get it out there for you guys. And so yeah, let's get straight into this one though. So of course this is the big kind of header for the next, big UFC pay-per-view, and that is coming just kind of tomorrow evening, early hours of Sunday if you are in the UK, and that is the rematch, in which, to be fair, at one point, I don't think fans were actually thinking was going to happen. Of course, there was a weird little moment where Alex Pereira was kind of supposedly hacked on Twitter and said some things about, not really wanting to fight and being annoyed with the way that things were going with the UFC and stuff like that. But, that was him being hacked apparently. I don't actually know if he was or not. I don't believe he was. Maybe he just wanted to kind of fuel up things, or, wanted to get a little bit more for the rematch. Again, I'm not entirely sure if that worked out for him or not, but nonetheless, we do have this fight being made, and it's been a bit of a weird build-up to the fight. I mean, the first fight, there was kind of the normal things of Alex Pereira, where he kind of looks happy, confident, he was doing his kind of stoic stuff and trying to stare you down and stuff like that, and the intensity is always there. But with this fight, it's been a bit strange because they've been going back and forth a bit between the two of them, and neither of them speak the same language. They both speak different languages. There's been a bit of tension. Pereira has said that Ankalaev was kind of avoiding him. Then they had a bit of a, scuffle, I suppose is the right word to say, around kind of the UFC events during fight week, and then they were using the translators to go back and forth between each other, and then they were using Google Translate to go back and forth, talking shit to each other. Again, it's weird, it's strange. I've not really seen something like that before. But I suppose, that's what's getting them up for the fight, getting them hyped and ready for the fight. And I mean, the first fight was kind of Ankalaev being able to solve what at the time was quite an indestructible, Pereira. Of course, Pereira got knocked out against Adesanya, down at middleweight, but he went on such a run in the light heavyweight division where his kind of indestructibility kind of came back and was around him, and he had that aura around him. But of course, Ankalaev was able to push him back, and he was able to handle the power of Pereira. And not many people have been able to do either of them things, really. They've, often given him a lot of respect and gone on the back foot and just circled around, whereas Ankalaev was able to push him back with kind of the explosiveness of him and was able to have a lot more success. And, even though fans weren't really expecting much of Ankalaev coming into this fight, in my opinion, I think fans, were expecting things to be looking like maybe a bit of a closer fight, but I think a lot of people were still expecting Pereira to win, especially after Ankalaev's performance against Rakic, where he was striking quite a lot, not really doing the wrestling in which fans wanted him to, see, to get them hyped to see, a wrestler up against Pereira. But, nonetheless, Ankalaev was able to pretty much nullify the attacks of Pereira for the most part, and, pretty much won 4 out of the 5 rounds, really. And yes, fans were booing and everything like that, but you can't really be booing Ankalaev's performance because, like I say, he nullified Pereira. If you've got to boo anybody's performance, and you've got to boo Pereira's, because he really wasn't able to do that much or to really get much of his work going. So again, that's what made that win for him so impressive. Again, he's had to work incredibly hard to get another title shot. Of course, he drew against Blachowicz for a title shot a while ago, and then since then has had to, kind of rebuild. I mean, he had that fight against Johnny Walker, which of course he then had to fight him again, and then made easy work of him. Then he fought Rakic as well. So again, he has had to work hard to get another world title opportunity, and that's coming off a draw. It was obvious that Dana White didn't want to see Ankalaev fight for the title, because he knew how much of a threat that Ankalaev could have been against Pereira. But it did get to a point where, you know, there was really nobody else that Pereira could have fought other than Ankalaev. So, you know, now Ankalaev's the champion. Again, is Dana White wanting Ankalaev to be the champion? Probably not, because he's not the most, you know, on paper excitable of champions, and you know his past few performances haven't really been the most exciting for kind of the casual fans like Pereira has been in his career. So again, it will be interesting to see if, you know, if it goes to a close decision again, what will be said, what will happen. But I think it's definitely going to be an interesting fight for the actual true kind of fans of the UFC and mixed martial arts in general. Yes, again, you know, Pereira's coming into this fight after being a very heavyweight, but is looking in very good shape. And I think he's definitely going to be coming into this one, you know, looking good, looking sharp, really trying to, you know, be the best version of himself. I think there might be a bit more wrestling in this fight, so we'll have to wait and see if Pereira has kind of drilled much wrestling in this, and how good his wrestling actually is, because he was able to nullify the takedown threat of Ankalaev throughout the entirety of their fight. To be fair, I mean, Ankalaev wasn't really able to get him down to the ground at all. So again, I think he has shown some improvements there, but again, is it enough if it does go to the ground for him to be able to have any success of his own? Pereira, I mean, he does seem to be enjoying himself in between fights a lot, and that's kind of obviously a lot more on camera now. Again, I don't know what he was doing beforehand. I don't know if he's always been like this in between fights, but again, it's a lot more visible on camera that he's enjoying himself, and he's, you know, nothing wrong with that. And I said this before the last fight, there's nothing wrong with that, but is the serious, you know, ness there when it needs to be, turning it up when necessary. And, you know, obviously he's made a tremendous amount of money, and he's a, you know, a famous guy now. Is that, you know, is that drive and that will still there? Again, we will have to wait and see, and I think this fight will definitely prove if it is still there for Pereira. Pereira as a fighter, I think he, of course, turns into his punches well. I think that's where he generates a lot of his power, you know, just putting a lot of tension, a lot of muscle into the turn of his punches, even if they are, you know, short shots that he's able to throw. He chops, of course, the inside leg kicks very well. And again, you know, I would like to see him try and work on doing that a bit more, and that's how he would be able to slow down the explosive movement of Ankalaev. He walks you down for the most part. Again, he wasn't able to do that against Ankalaev, but if he is able to get a bit more confidence, he might be able to walk you down again. He has immense power, of course, that's been showcased in multiple of his fights. He's got pretty surprising speed in his kicks as well. I think that was something which was actually on display in that first fight. You know, he was able to distribute a great selection of kicks from high to low, and they were fast. And the question mark kick, the speed in that looks very impressive as well. He's able to kind of slowly edge and get in range, which is something in which means that he's able to kind of always be in range to get his strikes off. And I think he is an accurate striker as well. He's able to kind of beat you down and beat you up with just continuous pressure when he is at his best, and I think that pressure can be relentless again when he's at his best, and he's able to often kind of punch through you as well and not even see you as a target, and just get that power to really, you know, do damage no matter where he's landing on you. And you know, for the most part, he's able to impose his size. Again, you know, these are all the things in which I want to be seeing in the rematch. How well can he impose his size and power? Negatives about him: he's flat-footed. I think he doesn't have the best of timing on the back foot. I don't think he fights that well going backwards. I think he freezes if he gets put in bad spots on the back foot. Again, all these things I saw happening against Ankalaev in the first fight. I think stopping the takedown, I think, is still a problem, but he has, like I say, showed improvements. But I would just like to see maybe a little bit more creativity in takedown attempts from Ankalaev, or even just actually given a bit more of a kind of will to get a takedown. It looked a bit half-assed, half-hearted, the attempts in which he did try in that first fight. He stands tall, he's a big target to land on, and of course he was getting caught with the shots from Ankalaev. He can be frustrated, his head's on the line quite a lot, well, pretty much always on the line. He, you know, has, in my opinion, maybe a couple questions around how good his chin actually is. He seemed to get, you know, rocked a little bit against Ankalaev in that first fight. And again, of course, you know, when he's continuously going up to a heavy, weight in between fights and then cutting back down again, that is going to take, some of your chin kind of with it whilst doing that with them intense weight cuts. He does seem to fall off balance a lot, and again on the back foot that's more of evident. He isn't really able to keep the distance that well, and when he actually did use his jab, it did seem to have a lot more success, but he didn't use it enough. He's not feinting enough. He can be caught kind of off guard, and he doesn't really have the best of defensive guard as a whole. He can rely on his power too much, he can admire his work too much, and again his agility is poor. Ankalaev as a fighter, he's composed, they're both quite stoic, relaxed, composed fighters when they're in there. He's able to maintain a distance well. Them leg kicks to the body were really, well, not leg kicks to the body, kicks to the body were really impressive. The kind of push kicks in which he was using in that first fight was, like I say, really impressive, and was able to maintain a distance well. He won't be bullied. He's got, good solid striking abilities and skills. He's more of a takedown threat, of course. He's got faster hands and quick counters. Again, he's able to be lighter on his feet. He's able to spring off the back foot well, and that's how he can come in and catch Pereira with that left. He's often able to, find the target with his left hand, whether that being with a straight shot or a hook or kind of an overhand coming over the top. He's able to land that shot well. He can smother you as well. He's able to catch strikes better than I think Pereira is. He seemed to be able to catch quite a few of the bigger shots in which Pereira was throwing. He's always aiming to respond. He finds the target well with the left. Like I said, he carries his own level of power, which again comes through his explosiveness. He was able to cut off the ring well against, him, and also in the Rakic fight as well. So he showcased that he can cut off the ring/cage well, and he's a disciplined fighter in my opinion. Negatives about him, I think he doesn't really fight the best on the inside or in the clinch, in my opinion. I think Pereira can have bit of more success, fighting on the inside. He squares up, he can wait in range a bit too long, he can, of course forget about the wrestling and, fight at a very slow pace. And again, if Pereira comes in with that pressure style, he might be able to kind of catch Ankalaev, who was probably wanted to fight at a bit of a slower pace early. He, in my opinion, maybe has a little bit overrated wrestling. I think he's not that creative with the attempts, and can't seem to lock his hands for the double leg that well. So again, from what I've seen at the elite level, the wrestling isn't tremendously good. I think there is, other guys in which I've seen in the past who have fought at a higher level that have had better wrestling in the higher weight divisions. And again, I've just to say that he is the guy to wrestle with Pereira and that is his main focus is a lie, to be fair, in my opinion. He doesn't really check kicks the best because he's got quite a wide-ish stance, and he's also trying to catch the kicks, which, like I say, he catches shots better, but he's still taking the kicks, if you know what I mean. He's not trying to avoid them when he sees them coming. He sees them coming, and instead of trying to avoid them, he'll try and catch them, which again, is stopping a bit of the damage coming through, but it's not stopping that much, and he is still taking quite a big level of damage from the kicks, and he has lesser intensity, in my opinion. Who do I think is going to win in this rematch? I'm going to go with an Ankalaev unanimous decision again. And yes, that might be a boring prediction. Yes, that might not be what the fans are wanting to see. But I think the speed, the explosiveness, the striking ability, the possibility of a takedown threat, whether that actually is, that of a good takedown threat or not, it's still a threat, which again, Pereira still isn't tremendously used to in this division, is all things which are just going to make Pereira question himself and make Pereira more willing to go on the back foot. And I think it's going to play out very similarly to how the first fight did. Again, it might be a boring prediction me saying this, but I just see it playing out very similarly to how the first fight did. I don't think Ankalaev is going to be able to do enough to hurt him. I would like to see Pereira make a few adjustments, maybe use his jab a bit better to be able to have a bit more success at a mid-range. But other than that, I think it's still going to be more dominant by Ankalaev, and Pereira might even get frustrated into the later rounds, and that will be interesting to see what happens then. Then we can go on to fight next. I mean, of course, Procházka, Rountree. I'm about to speak about that fight in a second, but that's on this card. Of course, that could be the next opponent. Or Carlos Ulberg. Again, Ulberg's coming off his big win against Dominic Reyes. He hasn't fought either Pereira or Ankalaev yet, so he would be the kind of new fresh blood in which would, I'm sure, be entertaining for Ankalaev. I think he said that he probably would prefer the Ulberg fight Ankalaev because he knows that, of course, Pereira has fought the other two. So again, that could be a good fight to go down next. Moving on to the co-main event now, and of course this is another exciting fight in Merab Dvalishvili versus Cory Sandhagen for the UFC bantamweight title. Of course this is Merab with yet again another title defense. What is his third title defense now, coming off his win where he was much more dominant over Sean O'Malley, which was, an improved Sean O'Malley, and he was still, even better of a performance from Merab as well, which really showcased the kind of level of ability in which Merab does have. He does seem to still keep getting better and better with each and every fight. Merab is kind of on a Hall of Fame level tear, being undefeated in his, I believe, last 13 fights now, and is realistically running out of contenders to fight. I mean, the amount of names that are just great names in which he's fought already, is amazing to see. I mean, of course, the Magomed, O'Malley, Aldo, Cejudo, just to name a few, are just some of the, great names in which Merab's already fought. And, it will be interesting to see if he wins this fight and wins with ease. Will he try and move up in weights, or will he try and even go down in weight, or will he invite Pantoja to come up in weight? Again, it will definitely be interesting to see, because I don't think he'll go down in weight, because he does seem to really look, dehydrated when he's weighing in, and that just happened today, and he did look very dehydrated. But would he go up in weight? Again, I'm not entirely sure as well, because of course Aljamain Sterling, one of his best mates, is in that weight as well. So he is kind of restricted a bit as to just staying in his own division. I feel like he definitely is warranted, to be a guy to go on to try and become a two-weight world champion. And of course, a lot of fighters want to do that quickly and kind of rush to do that, whereas Merab has really had to work hard and definitely deserves that opportunity. But again, I just don't know if it will happen next. But of course, he has to, win this fight. I mean, Merab has said that he will stand and strike with Sandhagen. I think that is probably a lie, to be fair, to hype up the fight for the fans. But if he does do it, I don't know if it's something in which he should do. I mean, I think his striking has improved. I think he was able to look good with his striking timing with that short left hook against O'Malley in that second fight, but I still think at a mid-range that striking over O'Malley was able to have bits of success, and I think Sandhagen might be able to have his own level of success if Merab is just kind of sat at a mid-range, and if it's a striking contest like that, then Sandhagen might be able to just pick him off at a distance and not allow, Merab to get in and get involved. So I think maybe he might try and strike for a round with Sandhagen, and if that's not going well, then he probably will just resort back to what he knows. And again, so I would probably say that him standing and striking for the entirety of the fight is a lie, just to try and hype up the fight, in my opinion. Sandhagen, though, I mean, he has shown vast improvements over the years, of course, after his loss to Aljamain Sterling, which was a good few years ago now, where he kind of admitted that he had bad wrestling. I mean, he got submitted in the first round, and since then he's been able to go, of course, the full distance, mixing in a lot of wrestling against Umar Nurmagomedov, and that was definitely a performance where we kind of looked at Sandhagen and went, oh, okay, he actually has shown improvements. He's got his team around him, which definitely is a good team to have around him, and like I say, he's definitely a bit more of a threat now. And that was a really good performance against Nurmagomedov. And then last time out, he went on to fight against Davison Figueiredo, and he pretty much won via submission in that fight. I think it got classed as a knockout, but he pretty much just got a leg lock and, popped out his leg or his knee, and was able to cause a lot of damage there. And then, eventually the fight kind of just got called off just due to the leg lock. And I think that's something in which, of course, is going to be a very dangerous weapon for Sandhagen on Merab, because, of course, the fight definitely could be down to the ground quite a lot. So again, if Sandhagen is able to get the leg of Merab, it will be interesting to see how Merab gets out of that. I think, like I say, Merab will inevitably go on to his wrestling, because watching him drill and his strikes, when he's striking on the pads, it seems like he's always, just forcing his opponent back or his coach back, and then just getting him up against the cage. And I think, that's what we've seen him do on many of occasions. He'll strike or rush in, get you up against the cage, then he'll just kind of pick you up and take you to the ground. And that's kind of what we've seen drilled over and over again. And if he's still drilling that, then I think he will try and do that again. And I think he will, like I say, inevitably just go to his wrestling. He just has to be wary of the kind of rangy strikes of Sandhagen, not trading too much, and again, the leg locks is a thing in which he definitely has to be aware of, but also the ground and pound of Sandhagen, because if Sandhagen is able to scramble out of Merab's guard, then he will go for the ground and pound like he did against Deiveson Figueiredo. And so again, that will be interesting to see if Sandhagen gets that opportunity to do that. Who do I think is going to win this fight? I'm going to go with a Merab Dvalishvili win via submission in round 2. Again, it's, maybe a bit more of a boring prediction, but again, I think Merab has shown a great level of improvement, and I think he's going to be able to get an early submission in this fight. I think Cory Sandhagen, like I say, has showcased good wrestling, but still puts himself in vulnerable positions. I think there was a couple of times in which he put himself in a few, bad positions against Deiveson Figueiredo, where if it was Merab in that position with Sandhagen, I think he probably is, making him tap, or at least causing him a few more issues. So again, I think he is going to be able to get him in a submission. I think he'll probably try and strike, like I said, in that first round with Sandhagen, realise it's not really going as well, or realise not really much is happening, and then just go straight to the wrestling. Then we could go on to fight next. Again, like I've mentioned, he possibly would invite Pantoja up if Pantoja wants to move up in weight, but I don't really know if Pantoja does. Of course, he has to deal with his fight against Joshua Van. So it's interesting. I mean, maybe in the Magomed rematch, if he gets through Bautista, maybe a Bautista fight. If not, maybe a Petr Yan rematch. Again, it will just be rematches, and he will just be kind of lapping the division at this point. Moving on to the third and final fight in which I'm going to be speaking about of this stacked card. It definitely is a stacked card, and there is plenty of other very good fights on this card as well. Of one in which I've already kind of mentioned, in Jiří Procházka versus Khalil Rountree. This fight could be a number 1 contender fight. It is interesting as, like I say, of course they both have lost to Pereira. I think no matter what, Procházka isn't being given a title shot next, even if he wins via an early stoppage, so he probably will have to face a low-down contender again if he does win, or he's going to have to wait and sit on the sidelines for a while. So again, that would be interesting to see what happens if Procházka does win. They are both coming off wins against Khalil, which of course makes it interesting for a kind of analytical point of view, where you are kind of watching the fights and studying the fights and seeing how they both did against the same opponent. But of course, Procházka, was able to stop him, and Khalil wasn't able to stop him. But again, you can see the dominance. Khalil was able to drop him still on multiple occasions as well, and so they were both able to dominate against Khalil. Procházka showcased that he was able to move his head a lot better and seemed much harder to hit, and was able to keep up with the high pace, fighting in chaos. Again, that might be tough for Khalil, who probably does want to fight in a bit of a slower pace and is probably a bit more used to that. Again, his fight with Jamal was a bit more of a slower pace, and again, if Procházka comes in and sets this high chaotic pace with, a movement in which is very hard to time and land, he's difficult for anybody, and he is a very unique opponent to prepare for. Of course, he's been hurt and been knocked out badly against Alex Pereira, and of course Khalil wasn't knocked out, as badly against Pereira. So again, that's something which will lean in Khalil's side. He knows that he can knock him out because, of course, Pereira was able to do that as well. So if Khalil, is able to land the right shot, then I think he will, perhaps be able to hurt Procházka. But, Khalil himself, he's shown a lot of improvements in his career as well. He's now kind of a full-on Muay Thai type of fighter since his loss against Johnny Walker them years ago. He kind of went to Thailand, and he was really able to develop a great Muay Thai kind of skill set, and he's now a well kind of rounded fighter. And I think, that was really on show against Jamahal Hill, who of course he was completely outstriking. He was chopping down his leg, making it very evident that Jamahal Hill was struggling to move with, the pain in which he was putting Hill in, by chopping down his legs. He was also hitting him well with the check hooks, which again seemed to be able to cause a lot of damage to Hill, being able to drop him on multiple occasions. And he was also keeping his hands high as well. Of course, Procházka never really keeps his hands high and his chin is kind of always up in the air, the two things in which defensively you don't want to be doing. So, Khalil, if he's able to catch a shot and then return with his own speed and power, he might be able to, land that sudden big shot in which he times well, because he has got good timing that could go on to hurt Procházka. I think Khalil often, seems to be trying to go for that highlight reel kind of stoppage where he'll put his kind of fist up in the air. He did it versus Anthony Smith, and Anthony Smith just kind of let him get the win at that point because Anthony Smith didn't want to be in there anymore. But then he did seem to try and do it against Jamahal Hill as well when he dropped him, and he kind of just invited Jamahal Hill back to his feet. I think if Khalil is able to drop Procházka, then he needs to go down to the ground of him and really go for the ground and pound straight away, because Procházka isn't that good on the ground, and I think Khalil could really get some damage down to him and get a stoppage that way. I think if he invites him back up, then again, it'd be a chaotic fight, and that again could lean into Procházka getting a sudden big strike. So again, if Khalil is able to drop him, he needs to go down to the ground, in my opinion, to be able to have, that kind of fight finishing success. Who do I think is going to win this fight? I think that Khalil Rountree is going to be able to win this fight by a... I'm not sure. I'm going to say a TKO late in round 4 or 5. But I think he's going to be able to gradually slow down Procházka with the leg kicks. I would like to see somebody throw, some shots to the actual body of Procházka to see how he reacts to that. But then again, I think he might be able to drop Procházka at some point. I think he's definitely going to have to be wary of the speed and, of course, the explosiveness of Procházka and the kind of straight jab in which he throws with a good amount of power as well. Rountree might get caught with that, but I think he is going to be able to, like I say, showcase his timing, showcase his power, and if you can time against Jiří Procházka a nice shot, then you can pretty much time any of the elite light heavyweight fighters, because of course he is so difficult to land on. But then I think he is going to be able to beat him down and slow him down gradually, and then into the later rounds actually be able to get him out of there, and hopefully, like I say, go to the ground to actually finish off the fight to be able to get him out of there. And then that would be a huge win for him, a huge moment for him as well. Being able to beat, of course, a guy who has been at the top of the division for quite a while now. And then who he could want to fight, of course, possibly Pereira or Ankalaev. But at the same time, of course, Khalil Rountree got given the opportunity to fight for a title when he was quite low down in the light heavyweight rankings. When he fought Pereira, of course. So maybe he might be willing to kind of invite up a new contender as well and kind of return the favour to an extent. And so maybe somebody like a Mirzakhanov or a Guzkov, two guys who are on very good winning streaks themselves, and could be an all-action type of fight there, which I'd definitely be intrigued in seeing as well, whilst, Rountree is possibly waiting for what happens with the belt a little bit further along down the line, and then he gets another opportunity if he wins that as well. So maybe that could happen, and I would be here for that. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like video if you did, like video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.